The Essendon VFL team has lost to Footscray 5-2-32 to 13-17-95. We had 7 listed AFL players playing in the game. We're going to go through it all right now. So this game was played in extremely tough conditions, very, very wet. It was raining for the majority of the game, particularly large parts of the second half, and it was windy. There was a 4-goal breeze, at least a 4-goal breeze, maybe even more than that, blowing to the right side of the screen, and it was just an ugly game in horrible conditions out there at the hangar. The Bulldogs were a much more experienced team in this game. They had 17 listed AFL players playing. We just had the 7. And not surprisingly, we got smashed. 63 points. Look at the difference in scoring shots. And yes, I've got the score around the right way this time, unlike the senior game where I got it around the wrong way. But 63 points. Look, we kicked 5 goals, 2. They kicked 13-17. So this could have been a 90-point loss. The Bulldogs, just too many good, experienced players there. But there were a couple of positive signs from some of the listed players, including one who I thought was best on ground, who could be in line for a debut, our 14th debut, maybe, before the end of the year. So we're just going to go through some of those players right now. First of all, Alwyn Davey Jr, who is going to struggle to keep his place on the list, as most of us would agree, hasn't played seniors this year. He did play very well, though, in this game, and he's played a couple of games now playing off half-back. Now, having said that, the ball was down in the back line for large percentages of the game, so he should rack up, some reasonable numbers. But he had 20 disposals, 2 marks, 5 tackles, 3 clearances, 5 contested possessions, and 6 intercept possessions. I thought he was perhaps our second best player behind Jayden Nguyen. We're going to get to Jaden in a minute, but I thought Alwyn Davey was pretty good, and really, that's kind of his position. It looks like he's playing his best football for the year off half-back. And it just makes you wonder if he had played down there for, previous years, if he'd been trialled down there before, going down there in the last month or so, maybe it could have prolonged his career. Maybe we could have found someone off half-back. I think it's probably too late for him. For his sake, you want him to stay on the list, but it's going to be probably too hard. We need to delist 9 players. He's out of contract. He's 22, and he hasn't played senior football this year in a year where we've had 13 debutants. So he has been in good form. We've got to acknowledge that, and well done to him for the last 3 weeks in the VFL, being among our best. But the reality is, if he hasn't played senior football this year, and we've had 13 debutants, it's unlikely he will be remaining on the list. Archer Day-Wicks is really struggling. The last couple of months, he has been kind of unsighted. He just doesn't get near the ball. He had 6 disposals today, 2 marks, 5 tackles, 2 contested possessions, and that's it. And he just doesn't do enough. And that's really his problem. They selected him because they like his skill set. They think he's a good size, good shape, good athlete, all those sort of things. But he just struggles to impact games with, I think, what I would call important possessions. And, his contract has been extended. I think he comes out of contract at the end of 2026. He's not an uncontracted player this year. So you'd think he'd probably stay on the list. But really, he has been very much unsighted, even at VFL level over the last couple of months. He hasn't done a lot. We just got to call it out when we see it. And he is just going to have to lift, I would think. Kale Gerrein, the big, tall forward who has been used a little bit in defence at various times in the VFL, also has been used a little bit in the ruck. Played a pretty good game. It's going to be hard, obviously, for him to, be a debutant this year, given the abundance of tall players we have. I mean, Archer May was a late out from this game, by the way. Archer May and Ben Hobbs both didn't play. But Archer May could come back. He's ahead of Gerrein, obviously, in the pecking order. And if you bring Archer May back into the senior team, that's 4 big talls we've got in the forward line. So someone at least will have to make way there. And Gerrein would be, 5th or 6th in the pecking order. But he did have a pretty good game. He had 15 disposals, 7 marks, 1 tackle, no clearances, 3 contested possessions, and 5 intercept possessions. There were lots of opportunities to get intercept possessions today, given the dominance of the Western Bulldogs, so some of these stats might be a little bit skewed, but nevertheless, he is playing pretty well. I think from what I've seen of him, his best football this year has been in the second half of the year, which is a good sign, because what you really want is you want these players to be improving. You don't want them, say in the case of Day-Wicks, to be going backwards and playing their worst football at the end of the year. You want them to be getting better and learning. And that's one thing Gerrein seems to be doing. He seems to be looking more like a natural footballer. And certainly I think his prospects of being a good Essendon player in the next few years are right up there. So as I mentioned, Hobbs didn't play in this game. Hobbs and Archer May were both omissions from this game, not injuries or anything like that. I'm assuming not injuries. There's no suggestion of that, although Hobbs, of course, did have that groin the previous week, so I don't know whether they're just being cautious with him. Maybe they just wanted to trial other players. I'm not sure, but it's just worth noting that those two players didn't play. Jye Menzie, who has really done nothing wrong over the last couple of weeks, even today, did okay. He had 13 disposals, 3 marks, 2 tackles, 6 contested possessions, and, him or Oscar Smart at the moment, you could sort of flip a coin as to who's the better option. I don't really know. They're both kind of similar attributes in the senior team. Smart's a bit younger, has missed those opportunities to get his first goal. Menzie's a bit more experienced. Do you go with a 19-year-old Oscar Smart with an extra 4 years up his sleeve, or the Jye Menzie? I don't know. I think Menzie's, just given that Menzie's out of contract, and uncontracted players are obviously easier to dispense with when you're doing list management, I think his days are probably numbered. But really, his form in the VFL has been quite passable over the last 3 weeks. He's been among our better players. Jayden Nguyen. Now, I think it's Nguyen. It's Win or Nguyen. Someone else might know. I've heard it's pronounced Win, just Winn. It's kind of a common name, Nguyen. It's like Smith, isn't it? But I just call it Nguyen. He was, I thought, our best player. And I think there's a potential now that he could... I wouldn't have thought this a few weeks ago. There's a potential that he could be making a senior debut. The only thing that could potentially hold him back, he did suffer a bit of a knock in the last quarter. I don't think it knocked him out, but he was lying on the ground as if he'd been knocked out, and then he sort of recovered and went to the bench. So I don't know what's going on there. Obviously, there might be, we'll just wait and see. But he had 17 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles, 1 clearance, 7 contested possessions, and 7 intercept possessions. So he was everywhere. He was getting high impact possessions. He was playing very well as a defender. And like I said, look, you can sort of interpret these numbers in a different way if you're just looking at the numbers, given the ball was down there. But just even to the naked eye, watching him, he looked good. He looked pretty exciting. He was taking the game on. And he did make one error where he turned the ball over, but, we'll forgive him for that. But those 7 intercept possessions, he did start to look like a footballer. He's got a bit of dare about him, a bit of dash. And this was, I thought anyway, from the games I've seen this year, this was the best game he's played at VFL level for the Bombers. So that obviously increases his chances potentially of making a senior debut at some point before the end of the year. I reckon there's probably a 50-50 chance he makes a debut. Obviously, it depends on a lot of things, injuries and things like that. So we'll see how we go. But this was a really encouraging performance from Nguyen. And, certainly his best game for the year, in my opinion. Vigo Visentini, 9 possessions, 1 mark, 4 tackles, 3 clearances, 25 hitouts, 5 contested possessions, 2 intercept possessions. Look, from what I could gather, didn't really have much of an impact on the game. The conditions were horrible, though. It wasn't really a game suited for big men. It's just one of those games. And I just think, as I've said in other videos, he just needs to play out the year in the VFL and gain more experience and development at that level, because that's the level I think he's at. You don't want to expose someone to the game when they're not ready for it, because that would be often, you probably have the negative effect of what you're trying to do, and really have a good big pre-season and really try to work his way into the team next year. So that was the VFL report from the 7 listed players who played. So I thought Jayden Nguyen and Alwyn Davey were our 2 best players. So did anyone watch the game? Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think should come into the team. If you think Jayden should come into the team, I think there's a strong possibility of it. And I'm starting to warm to the idea. I probably wasn't of that view a few weeks ago, but it is something that I might be able to be convinced of if he has another good one next week. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to this channel. And as always, go Bombers.